Advertising and marketing in the digital age. The law is a two-edged sword that is, ideally, there to protect you as well as your customer. Business and corporate law protects your internet shop and your assets from liabilities, but it also places certain responsibilities on your shoulders. Boundaries in cyberspace may not be as obvious or as defined, but they do exist. Regardless of where you're operating, fraud and deception are still just that, and are treated as such by the Federal Trade Commission. While more and more companies are doing business and advertising online, the number of shoppers going online is keeping pace. Most legal principles of advertising apply to the Internet as well as radio, TV, and print. The problem is that Internet technology changes on an almost daily basis, and each change brings up new issues. In this final chapter, we'll attempt to cover most of the vital issues that should be considered when promoting an online business. Federal Trade Commission laws and the World Wide Web. What the FTC labels as unfair or deceptive acts or practices refers to advertising claims, marketing and promotional techniques, and general sales practices. These rules are applicable to all forms of communication, from print advertising to live demonstrations. Since the dawn of the Internet age back around 1994, over 100 legal actions have been taken against online businesses allegedly engaged in unfair or deceptive acts or practices. FTC issues rules which are clear prohibitions against these acts, and guidelines which are examples designed to help netpreneurs such as yourself in complying with FTC rules. Fair play. The three basic principles of advertising law are no doubt familiar to you, but they bear reviewing. Ads must be truthful and contain no misleading material. The advertiser must provide evidence or substantiation of any claims. Ads must meet a test for fairness. Whether you write your own ad copy or hire a professional, you should readily be able to identify any claims of product or service benefits and determine if any express, stated, or implied claims might be misconstrued. Any claims that fall into that category require disclosure or qualifying information. Disclosures. It may seem unfair to you as an honest merchant or service provider, but legally you are required to phrase your advertising message in such a way that it absolutely cannot be misconstrued in any way, and failing to do that can leave you or your company liable. Fortunately, compliance is not difficult. A common way to fulfill this obligation is to use disclaimers such as "your results may vary" or "not proven to work for all situations." It is, however, your responsibility to determine A, which claims may require substantiation, and B, what information should be included in any disclosure. Now, it's important to understand that a disclosure can only qualify a claim or limit it so your potential customer doesn't receive a misleading impression. It's not a license to make a false claim. If a disclosure completely contradicts your claim, that claim is false and requires modification. Beyond qualifying claims about a given product or service, a disclosure is also required in order to provide your potential client about the terms of the transaction. You'll see good examples of this if and when you start searching online for paralegal help in incorporating your business. The most reputable firms will have a clear statement on at least one of their web pages, and usually more, that goes something like this. Fees listed here are in addition to required state or jurisdiction fees. In other words, while they're shouting to the heavens that you can incorporate in corporate heaven today for only $99.95, they're also letting you know beyond all doubt that it will actually cost you more than that. Which brings us to the next topic, the clear and conspicuous rule. No fair hiding it in fine print. FTC rules require that any disclosures be clearly and conspicuously displayed in an online advertisement. In the old days of early print ads, unscrupulous merchants, service providers, and companies used the fine print to get around any disclosure requirements, knowing that few people ever read an entire advertisement. Here you'll have to think like your potential customer. Just as almost nobody reads every word on a printed page, almost nobody reads every single page on a website. While it can be argued that consumers have control, and even an obligation to control, what material they're viewing online and in what quantities, the fact is that they're probably not looking for disclosures. They probably aren't even expecting to find them, because frankly, they're searching for an answer to their pain, their problem, or their desires. It's human nature to see that which we want to see and find that which we want to find. Therefore, the burden is on you as the advertiser to place disclosures where your potential customers cannot possibly miss them. What constitutes clear and conspicuous? Unfortunately, there is no one-size-fits-all solution here. Some creativity and flexibility is required, and the kind of disclosure necessary is going to depend on the information and how it's presented. Online ads can be text-only, use different kinds of graphics, or even audio and video. The bottom line, disclosures must be crystal clear. While there are no hard and fast rules as to what constitutes clear and conspicuous disclosure, there are a few guidelines. Disclosures should be placed in reasonable proximity to the claim which it is qualifying. Disclosure should be reasonably prominent, easy to see. This refers not only to placement, but to font and choice of colors, high contrast between background and text colors. Other elements of the advertisement should not distract from the disclosure. If the advertisement is lengthy, consider whether or not a disclosure bears repeating over multiple locations and even pages. If audio and/or video is used, disclosures should be audible, understandable, and in the case of video, appear long enough to be fully read and understood. Language used in disclosures should be targeted to the intended audience. For example, if your product or service is aimed at fans of monster truck rallies or at the Atlanta Braves, chances are you won't want to use a lot of complex legal terms in any disclosure. In the next section, we'll look at a series of fictional ads to show how these guidelines can be incorporated, and it's not as tricky as you think. Proximity. The triggering claim is the one that calls for an immediate disclosure. The most effective way to do this is to make sure the disclosure is part of any product description. Consider the following mock ad. Simulated Spoked Wheels by Kaputnik Industries. Only $499.95 per wheel. Stylish and practical, these simulated spoked wheels combine the sportiness of racing spokes and the reliability of hubcaps. The headline clearly states that these wheels are simulated, not real spokes. This disclosure is repeated twice in the product description. By using the disclosure simulated right before the trigger term spoked wheels, the advertiser has made it very clear as to the type of merchandise being offered. The consumer has not been misled, and the merchant has fulfilled his obligation and shielded himself from any potential liability in this matter. Now, what about a web page ad that is longer than the screen or encompasses more than a single web page? There are many times that a disclosure contains more information that can be comfortably placed on a single screen. Your ad will also vary in appearance depending on which browser is being used, the resolution of the screen, and the user's operating system, none over which you or your web designer have any control. Viewing a full disclosure may require that the viewer either A. scroll down the page, B. click on a hyperlink in order to jump to a different page, or C. both. If a viewer fails to do any of these things and thus misses the full disclosure, the responsibility lies squarely on the merchant or advertiser. All new for 2008, the Romero Landshark Deluxe Roadster. A link to Romero Motors, a link to features and options, a link to pricing, a link to media press, a link to what proud owners say. You can experience the joy of driving once again. Take a tour under the hood. It's a lot more affordable than you think. The 08 Romero Landshark Deluxe Roadster brings back the thrill of classic sports cars along with cutting-edge styling that includes decorative aluminum faux side exhaust pipes, simulated spokes, and after that, the advertisement is cut off. I was a fighter pilot during Persian Gulf I, and I can tell you, flying an F-14 was nothing like this. Colonel Frank Burns, U.S. Air Force, retired, paid endorsement. By studying the ad just read to you, you'll notice several obvious cues that indicate the presence of additional information. First of all are the hyperlinks to additional pages. This will be the third thing the visitor notices, right after the traditional bikini model and, of course, the car itself, which was all part of the ad. Secondly, the arrangement of the informational text in the table, which draws the eyes in a downward direction. This is followed at the bottom by a prominent line indicating the fold. This would normally appear at the bottom of the screen and indicate the presence of additional information. Thirdly, the text in the left-hand column is continuous, set off by the vertical gray bar that continues below the screen. There were almost immediate disclosures. There was red lettering in the right-hand column, drawing the eye to the endorsement, which is short, sweet, and to the point. Anyone who reads it cannot fail to notice the disclosure underneath. Here is an example of what not to do. A photo of a man with a woman sitting on his lap, having a great time. The genuine patented H.G. Wells Tillinghast machine. Yours for only $999.95 plus shipping and handling and applicable taxes. This is the same machine in which the time traveler journeyed 800 centuries into the future world of the Eloi and the Morlocks. Where will it take you? Order yours today. And there's an Add to Cart button, plus a paragraph's worth of white space. For entertainment purposes only, modern physics precludes the possibility of time travel. On the previous ad, one disclosure was right beneath the image. Immediately, the consumer knows that he or she will be paying more than the stated purchase price, which is good. Obviously, it would be better if the customer knew exactly how much, but software is available that can calculate these charges on the checkout page based on shipping destination, providing the exact amount before the sale is finalized. The problem is that white space underneath the Add to Cart button. Chances are that the disclosure is not on the screen, and the sizable space underneath the button will most likely lead the customer to believe that there is no further information. Consequently, when their new Tillinghast machine fails to transport the purchasers on into brave new future worlds, it's a good bet that your company will be held liable. Hyperlinked disclosures. This is not the best choice and should be avoided if at all possible. There will inevitably be situations, however, when the information contained in a disclosure will be too lengthy to include in proximity to the claim, or may apply to multiple claims. In this case, the hyperlink to the disclosure must be prominently labeled as such. In the next mock ad, a photo of headers and a hot rod. Kaputnik headers, the ultimate performance for your machine. Aircraft-style headers are not street legal in all states. Click here to find out what the law is in your state. Suggested retail price, $13.99.95. Our price, $949.95. And an Add to Cart button. Immediately under the Add to Cart button, free-flowing exhaust means power, and Kaputnik aircraft-style headers means free-flowing exhaust. No need for all that tree-hugging environmental stuff like catalytic converters, O2 sensors, or mufflers. Just bolt these babies on and start smoking while the competition eats your dust. It's obvious that a hyperlink is needed here, as it would be virtually impossible to list the laws for all 50 states. As far as the click-through page is concerned, the advertiser has some options. The easiest solution would be a page listing the names of the states, followed by a simple no or OK. The advertiser might also consider color-coding the states, so those in which the product was illegal would be in one color, and those allowing the product would be in a different one. The bottom line in this case is that A, the hyperlink is in a prominent location, B, the purpose is clearly stated, disclosure, and C, the click-through page presents the information in a clear, simple manner. A hyperlink that said simply, learn more, would not have been sufficient. Remember that your customer is, hopefully, drooling over the merchandise. Usually, the picture will tell someone all they want to know, so unless there's a compelling reason to learn more, chances are your customer will disregard the hyperlink, thus missing the disclosure. Likewise, simply turning the product label or image, in this case Kaputnik headers, into a hyperlink would not be sufficient, because again, unless there is a compelling reason to click on a hyperlink, the average web visitor will disregard it. It bears repeating. Label the link clearly. State a clear reason for it. Make certain the information found on the click-through page is clear. Another issue to be aware of when it comes to a separate disclosures page is clutter. Avoid click-away links, banner ads, images, unless such images are part of the disclosure, and superfluous, unrelated, text. In other words, anything that could possibly distract the viewer from the contents of the disclosure. Your click-through page is for one purpose only. Keep it consistent. Anyone who has spent any time at all on the World Wide Web is aware that there is a mind-boggling plethora of hyperlink styles in use. Some are text, some are graphic, some are underlined, some are not. The list goes on and on. However, all successful websites use a single style for all the hyperlinks throughout the site. Which style is used depends on the individual site. What is important is that a single style be used for all hyperlinks throughout your website so that visitors will consistently recognize them as such. Keep it simple. Technological bells and whistles such as frames and scrolling text may be tempting to use, especially if you or your web designer are well versed in the more creative uses of JavaScript. Scrolling text can be especially attention-getting, particularly on an otherwise static web page. While there is nothing inherently wrong or illegal with using such techniques for your disclosure, it's inadvisable. The reason is something we referred to earlier, and an issue with which every web designer struggles. You have no control over what browser your visitor is using to view your site. Ironically, it's almost impossible to discover hard and fast statistics on which users are using which browser. It's safe to assume that at least 90% will be using either Microsoft Internet Explorer, which comes bundled with all Windows operating systems, or Netscape. Still, you have no way of knowing which version of the browser is being employed, or at what resolution. New browser versions come out regularly, and while most people today use 19-inch monitors, the majority will use the default resolution of whatever browser they may have installed. This may or may not be the optimal resolution for viewing elements such as scrolling text or frames. Since the burden is on you, we can't say this enough, to make sure any disclosures are not missed, it's safest to use simple techniques such as those outlined here. About pop-ups and pop-unders. Pop-up windows have been a favorite of aggressive advertisers practically since the beginning of e-commerce, and in less than 10 years quickly wore out their welcome with impatient and justifiably irritated web surfers. They're still used, of course, but with the increasing and understandable popularity of pop-up blocking software, some of which is integrated right into the browser, they're almost completely ineffective today. For that reason, pop-up windows are not a good choice for displaying required disclosures. Pop-unders have gained in popularity in recent years among advertisers, and so far there seems to be few ways to stop them. The problem is that they tend to go unnoticed until the web surfer has ended his or her browsing session and closed the main window. As this pertains to disclosures, it means that your customer in all likelihood will not see any such disclosure until after the sale has been completed. Therefore, pop-unders are not a good choice either. Summary. An entire volume could be dedicated to the subject of disclosures and all the different ways they might be presented, how to ensure they get attention, and more. While there is no way to be 100% sure your disclosure will be noticed and read, the general rule of thumb is KISS. Keep it simple, silly. By studying the previous examples and combining creative thinking with good study and analysis of your website as to which pages are getting the hits and how traffic flows through your site, you can be almost 100% certain that your disclosure messages are receiving the required attention. Although it may seem self-evident, it should nonetheless be pointed out that the requirements for disclosures also apply to any expressed warranties as well as terms of sale, for example, return and refund policies. These are typically hyperlinked, in which case they need to be prominent and clearly labeled for what they are. In addition, they need to be viewable prior to sale and have printer-friendly options. The reason, of course, is to give the customer access to this material while making the decision to buy or while comparison shopping. These guidelines are also extremely important if you run some type of subscription service with a negative option plan. In other words, you're going to continue to charge their credit card or other payment account until the buyer notifies you in writing to discontinue. In this case, you have a legal obligation to notify in writing upfront and prior to initial sale of such conditions that include A, the amount of the recurring charge, B, the monthly date of the recurring charge, and C, the procedure and conditions for discontinuing. Additionally, email communication should be used each month to remind the consumer of the impending charge, identifying your company, what merchandise or subscription is being shipped or charged for, and when the customer can expect to receive the merchandise or be able to access their subscription. You'll need to put this information into the subject heading. Additionally, you may need to advise your customers on your site to adjust any spam filters they may have so your notices do not get routed to a bulk mail folder and disregarded. Direct marketing. Before wrapping everything up, we're going to take a look at FTC rules and guidelines when it comes to direct marketing. Direct marketing refers to a range of targeting advertising techniques. In the old pre-internet days, direct marketing techniques consisted primarily of direct mail, the junk mail that clogs your inbox, and everyone's favorite, telemarketing. Today, direct marketing on the internet is primarily through one of two ways: targeted ads and email. Targeted ads. Targeted ads use sophisticated algorithms and data mining software, sometimes called spyware, to analyze browser cookies, the little bits of data left on people's hard drives by websites they've visited. This analysis can usually provide a pretty good picture of what kinds of websites the surfer visits and give a good indication of his or her tastes, needs, and/or desires. For example, if the data analyzed in a surfer's cookies indicated that they had visited a number of haberdasheries online, the software used in targeting advertising might bring up a banner ad for a line of hats you're selling. Hopefully, upon seeing the banner, the surfer will click to your banner ad and come to your site. While this type of marketing can be very effective, it's also very expensive. First, it usually requires an expert to set it up. Secondly, high-traffic digital property can be very expensive when it comes to renting ad space. The problem, however, is that targeted advertising of this type is really only effective when used on high-traffic sites. Direct email. Email marketing and solicitations have become a huge issue in recent years, and a number of laws regarding the practice of spamming, sending out unsolicited email advertisements, are now on the books in several states. In fact, while being unethical, it really isn't effective, and indeed may very well have the opposite effect of what is intended. In any event, reputable businesses no longer engage in this practice, if they ever did. Since spam specifically refers to unsolicited email advertisements, it begs the question of just how an honest merchant is supposed to promote his or her wares and/or services without having to shell out for expensive targeted ads or search engine optimization. The good news is that there are affordable and low-cost options out there, although they have varying degrees of effectiveness. There is a single legal loophole to all the spam rules. You may legally send a single unsolicited email to any address, which must contain a notice similar to this example. This is a one-time communication. No further information will be sent to you at this email address regarding this product or service unless you specifically request it by replying to info@mybiz.com. That way, it puts the customer in control and absolves you from any formal spam complaints. You should also be aware that even if a potential client chooses to receive mail from you, your messages must legally contain an opt-out link or a reply-to address the recipient can use to unsubscribe from any mailings. Purchasing opt-in lists. Several companies will provide lists of leads, names, and emails, often along with telephone numbers and addresses, in groups of 500 to 50,000. These can run anywhere from 25 cents to as low as 2 cents per name and email address. These are people who have opted in, that is, given permission to receive emails about a particular product, service, or opportunity. These lists can be very focused, but because of free email accounts that many people change as regularly as their stockings, they may not always be the most effective choice. If you have the money and an autoresponder set up, however, it can be as good a way to get started as any. Create your own opt-in list. There are several ways to do this. If you have a sizable budget for prominent banner ads and/or other ways to drive traffic to your site, it's a simple matter to set up a link on your homepage where people can choose to receive more information about your product or service. An even better way to do this is to offer customers the opportunity to receive a free subscription. Make sure to use the word free, it's a powerful one, to an informational e-newsletter. If such a newsletter is of sufficiently high quality and provides something of real value, chances are your customers will forward them on to their friends, doing a lot of your advertising for you. If you can't afford prominent ad space or optimization services, a good way to develop a list is to join an online group, listserv or BBS, that is oriented toward people who have an interest related to whatever it is you're offering. These are usually free to join, and as a member of the group, you have the privilege of emailing all members. One caveat, unless the group is specifically set up for it or allows it, do not blatantly promote your goods and services. It's okay to mention that you deal in these things, and you may and should certainly invite people to subscribe to your newsletter, but blatant attempts to market to the group will probably land you in trouble and incur a good deal of negative feelings. In general, while the Internet provides some of the most awesome opportunities for commerce the world has yet seen, today's consumer is more jaded than ever. Nothing will erode consumer confidence in this still relatively new medium than repeated deception and outright fraud. Technology can offer some protection for consumers, but as in all things, what can be used will invariably be misused, and there are numerous technologies, with more being developed all the time, that make fraud easy to commit and difficult to detect. Therefore, it's up to individual flesh-and-blood human beings to form the front line of defense against illegal and unethical business practices, because when consumers lose confidence in the marketplace, everyone loses. Federal Trade Commission rules regarding e-commerce are constantly changing to keep up with advances in technology. In addition, many existing FTC rules, such as those governing telemarketers, may be applied to email marketing. As a business person, you should visit the Federal Trade Commission website periodically for the latest guidelines. www.ftc.gov. Chapter 6. Conclusion. By now, you should be thoroughly aware that there are basically two sets of laws in the United States. One set designed to protect business interests, and the other set that protects the interest of the consumer. Although it may seem currently that businesses, especially big business, holds all the cards, the fact is that the law takes a dim view of deceptive advertising practices. The first set of laws, that which protects business, has also been much more subject to change throughout history. 3 times in U.S. history, the Gilded Age of the 1880s and 1890s, the Roaring 1920s, and the current period of deregulation that began around 1980, federal law regarding corporate business has been tilted far in the direction of favoring business and management. At other times, most recently during the Theodore Roosevelt administration, 1900 to 1908, and again between 1935 through the late 1970s, the laws were tilted the other way, favoring labor and consumers. If public sentiment is any indication, and if Congress responds to public pressure, laws may tilt yet again, though when this may happen and to what degree is anyone's guess. The point here is that corporate, tax, and business law is in an almost constant state of flux. This is one reason it's a good idea to consult with professionals prior to forming a business entity. Laws and regulations pertaining to advertising and marketing practices also change and evolve frequently, especially in response to technology. However, in most cases, these laws have always favored the protection of the consumer and continue to do so. There was a time in the U.S. when receiving a corporate charter obligated the entity in question to serve the public good in some way in exchange for asset protection and immunity from liability. Although this is not currently a requirement, many small corporations being formed today are voluntarily adding a component of social responsibility to their operations. This may be as simple as providing some type of free service to the community, supporting the local community by favoring local and domestic industries in business-to-business transactions, engaging in fair and sustainable trade practices, investing in employees, and more. While such practices may cut into your short-term profit margins, they are investments that will pay off quite handsomely in the long run, creating a solid, stable business that will provide a good livelihood for you and your family for decades. You'll enjoy greater loyalty from a wider client base and a community, online and off, who will lend you consistent support and strengthen your business. In conclusion, despite the seeming complexity of laws, rules, and regulations, building a successful long-term business requires little more than following a few rules of thumb. Play fair. Stand behind your product or service. Support those who support you. Under-promise and over-deliver. That way, even if you miss dotting the occasional I or crossing the periodic T, you'll weather the worst of storms and enjoy smooth sailing when conditions are right.